Hi, Sidra. It's a lot easier to do this than to type, and since you said you don't care if we mess with your photo a little bit, I'm just going to show you what I mean. The very first thing, yes, you were totally right on the money. This is way too warm, and when you look at them side by side, you can really tell. The second thing I want to say is that when you're doing backlit, just like Kate Luber said, the subject's face and the front are going to be much cooler than the backlight. And that's just because they're in the shadow, which means that the white balance is just naturally a cooler light. If you look on her shirt right here, this is a little bit blue, whereas the stripe that is in the sunlight is warm. So you can see that difference. The second thing I want to say is that when you're making adjustments to a photo, any global adjustments that you make, which is like a change to the entire photo, needs to really be geared towards the skin tone. Because any change that you make is going to affect the skin, and getting skin tones right is pretty paramount, especially when you're doing portraiture. So let me show you in practice how I would go about this photo. The first thing I want to do is adjust the white balance because her skin tone is a little bit too cool. Now, I don't know what her natural skin tone is, so I'm just going to have to guess. But I'm going to bring the warmth up just a little bit. And then I'm going to bring the exposure up. Now, when I'm bringing the exposure up, there are two things that I'm watching. The first thing I'm watching is my skin tone. The second thing I'm watching are these highlights. We do not want to blow these highlights, which I think I may have already just done with that minor adjustment. Yeah. But that's okay. So I'm going to bring it up a little bit, and then I'm going to actually bring up the contrast a little bit. There we go. So I can't bring the exposure up much more without blowing this. So at this point, I'm honestly going to switch to some local adjustments. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this. Now I think that skin tone's right. Hold on just a second. 15, 16, 17 spread. So maybe a little warm, maybe a little cooler. Yeah, there. All right, so I brought the white balance down just a little bit. And then I'm going to bring the darks up just a little bit. And I'm going to bring the shadows down. There we go. That's better. I'm going to take the highlights down just a little. Now I'm going to do the logo. All right, so this highlight right here is blown. So the first thing I'm going to do before I start moving on, I want to make sure that I can recover this. So I am going to, with this, make a brush of highlights, and I'm going to lower those highlights. I'm going to see what this does. There we go. I'm going to lower that even more. Because you want to recover some of the detail, and you want to make sure that it's not too blown. I'm going to up my brush a little bit because I feel like it wasn't going on very well. There we go. All right, yep, that's better. All right, now I'm going to start making adjustments to her little face, and I am going to take a new brush, and I'm going to do exposure. And I am going to brush on, I'm going to bring this down because I don't want it to come on too harsh, feathering all the way up. And I'm going to I'm going to turn the highlights up a lot so you can see them. I'm going to brush on here on her forehead, here on her nose, on her cheeks, her chin, and her cute little lip. And then I'm going to bring it down. And then I'm going to do the hands as well. Another tool that you can use is the radial filter. I'm going to brush that on. I can also use this to bring up exposure and to bring up the contrast just a little bit. It's still staying okay. All right, now I'm going to make adjustments to the rim light in your hair. I'm going to increase my contrast. And I'm going to increase the saturation as well because I want that to be much warmer back there. I'm going to increase the overall vibrance. Now I'm going to bring up the overall texture. You could even add a sun back here. Then I'm going to add a brush to the eyes, bringing up clarity, whites, and highlights. All right, I'm going to actually adjust the crop a little bit too, I think. She's kind of centered. I want to bring her more. I'm not going to have this be, I want her to be a little bit more on the rule of thirds. Right there. Next, I'm going to remove this white spot down at the bottom using the spot removal brush. And I'm going to brush on where it's white. And then I'm going to change the destination to a part just above the slide so that it duplicates it. So I'm going to slide it down here about where it is. And the way it looks like it's too feathered, so I'm just going to remove some of the feathering so that it gets the exact portion, and that looks great. Next, I'm going to take this highlight on the slide up here where it's blown, and I'm going to just take the brush tool and lower the exposure and the highlights on it just to make it a little less jarring. If I was in Photoshop, I would clone another part of the slide and just put it over that so the slide goes all the way up, but it's a little too difficult to do in Lightroom, and so I'm just going to lower it to make it a little bit less distracting. All right, so that's getting closer to what I want. I think this part is a little bit blown out. I'm gonna take a look at that again, which is gonna be right here. I'm gonna go like this. I'm gonna hit here. There, yeah, it's a little bit too, I'm gonna take the highlights down there so that it's not clipped. I just hit this button right here to show my clipping highlights. Okay, now I'm going to go back to making global adjustments, and I'm going to go to my tone curve, and I'm going to bring the lights up, and I'm going to bring the darks down. Then I'm going to come up to my white balance, and I'm going to bring the temperature down just a little bit. And then I'm going to slide the tint towards green just a little bit as well. Next, I'm going to go to the HSL panel, and I'm going to bring the orange saturation down just a little bit, and I'm going to bring the orange luminance up just a little bit. I always like to check in and see where I am on the edits, so I like to go back to the original and then go back to the edit to see what changes I made, and sometimes it'll stand out what needs to be changed. In this case, my sun flare in the back stood out just a little bit too much, so I'm going to bring down the exposure on that. All right, that's it. I just did a quick edit using only Lightroom, but as you can see, by using specific adjustments, not just global adjustments, you can make a huge drastic difference. This is not perfect. This was very quick, but I just wanted to show you what I would do using more specific edits.